Now let's see the preservation of meat, how we actually preserve meat. That would mean how we can increase the shelf life of meat for better selling or to have more life so that it can be sold in the market. There can be more holding time for meat basically. As we know that meat is very perishable commodity. It is an ideal medium for microorganisms to grow, so this would spoil very quickly. So there would be undesirable changes that would take place in meat very soon, and it can go all spoiled within few hours if the conditions are not maintained properly. Because there are a lot of microbial changes that can take place. There could be chemical changes that would take place as well in the meat. So they all basically reduce the quality as well as the life of meat. There are different kind of approaches that we actually follow in order to increase the shelf life of meat. I think the most common is chilling or refrigeration. It is always desirable to actually store meat in refrigerator soon after we slaughter the animal. So that would reduce the onset of spoilage in meat, like all the microbial growth as well as enzymatic growth and the chemical reactions. They all stop if we chill the food at a lower temperature, because temperature has got an effect on restoring the quality of meat as well as inhibiting the growth of microorganisms as well as undesirable reactions taking place by enzymes. So normally in refrigeration temperature, it's from 2 degrees C to 5 degrees C temperature at which the meat is stored. And once we store this meat in refrigerators properly, that would enhance the hygiene of the meat, the safety of the meat and shelf life as well as appearance of the meat as well. And the nutritional quality is improved because there won't be much nutritional losses that would take place. Another technique is called curing of meat. This is also a common technique that is normally used, in which we treat the meat with salt, sugar, sodium nitrite, and spices, etc., to give certain flavors as well. So these spices do have both the effect. They increase the flavor of the meat as well as they have a lot of antimicrobial compounds that would actually restrict the growth of microorganisms. And salt and sugar, they act as preservative as well, so they would basically increase the shelf life of meat. Smoking is another way, because smoke would have also a lot of antimicrobial compounds in it, so that can increase the shelf life of meat. And another factor is that the smoke is also favorable. It gives good flavor to the meat that is quite acceptable, and it can increase the quality of meat. So this was another technique that is normally used for preservation of meat. And the third, and I think the most common one in our country, is freezing of meat. This is a common method of preserving meat. There are not much nutrient losses, because once we freeze the meat, there are very less deteriorative changes that would take place. But anyway, because once we freeze the meat, there are one undesirable change that can be possible, is that when we freeze this meat in refrigerator, there are larger ice crystals that would form, and these ice crystals are normally very sharp, so they can break the structure of meat, and so the meat would lose a lot of liquids that would make it less juicy, and it won't be much tender. So it's not desirable basically to freeze the fresh meat. Rather, freezing should be used for the cooked meat, because in cooked meat there would be lesser quality changes as compared to the fresh meat. Similarly, another method is canning, in which we would can the meat into the cans, and this actually preserves the meat for a very long time. Normally, canning can preserve meat for many years as well. During the process of canning, we employ high temperatures. These high temperatures would destroy the microorganisms present and most of the enzymes as well within the meat, and then we aseptically package these meat or meat products into those cans. So undesirable changes would not take place. But again, it's a matter of preferences. So maybe there are people who would not like the flavors developed during canning process or during storage process as well. So that's why this canning process is not very famous for every kind of meat products, but for only few kind of products. Another new method is radiation or sterilization of meat, in which we treat the meat through different kind of radiations. So meat can be sterilized without cooking, without change in the apparent structure of the meat, and it would kill all the microorganisms. Um, Anyhow, these kind of applications such as radiation or sterilization, it may not be liked by certain people because they say that probably the meat is not very much palatable due to these radiations, and the radiation would have also some of the negative perception about them as well, like they cannot be very safe for raw meat. But there are some other applications of radiations as well, like some of the ultrasounds can be used to maintain the desirable color in meat as well. So there are a lot of other applications like high pressure processing of meats that would actually imply higher pressures, and the meat would be preserved for a longer time. So these were all the kind of techniques that are normally used for preservation of meat. Uh, of course, this is not the exhaustive list, but this is the generally used preservation techniques that we discussed in this module.